What's going on, Switch Mentality? Today, I'm excited to have on Mark Mackie. As you guys all know, he's a former McMaster Marauder, a former OUA All-Star, the former OUA nominee for the Russ Jackson Award, and obviously now a former Eskimo. But right now, he's here with us live. Mark, how you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be on. Love when I checked out your channel, man. I watched all the content. I really loved it. I really believe in the message you're sending out. So it's cool that you reached out. I'm glad to be on with you.
Appreciate that. And a lot of people don't know, I actually played against Mark, and I think the score was, well, let's not talk about the score. I know it didn't end too well for us, but I remember you and I think your buddy Mike Kashik, you guys absolutely dominated. And for all the Queens guys watching this, I'm sorry, but they just dominated the game. And from that moment on, I knew both of you guys didn't belong there, man.
Kashik went off that game, bro. I was like, when are they going to stop sliding their linemen to the field? I got a good memory, though. I don't know if you remember this. When we played each other, it was, I think, my 5th year. I had the responsibility to drop out and look for a crosser. And, bro, there you were. Bro, you were flying. And I was just like, I'm screwed. There's nothing I can do here. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to hit him. Maybe the referees won't see him. I'm just going to hit him. And then, bro, as I hit you, the ball hit us at the same time. And you were mad. You were so mad.
Oh, I'm like, that's a bang. I was like, no.
I thought of that right away. I was killing myself laughing, dude.
Yeah, that's crazy. But so obviously you just spent a couple of years with the Eskimos, and before we even dive into that, like, what was that like getting drafted and like finally realizing your dream of becoming a professional athlete?
It was an incredible experience. I mean, it's such a fulfilling feeling to have a long-term goal and then to be able to kind of achieve it and live it. So, I mean, very blessed that, things worked out the way it did. The draft sucked. The draft sucked. So I was, for people who don't know, I was drafted in the 8th round. I can't even remember it was like pick 60. It doesn't matter. It was late, and I had some like friends and like really like close friends were like came over because they knew about it, and that day was awkward. That day was awkward because I was like, by like the 6th, 7th round, we were all just looking at each other like, this isn't gonna happen. So I mean, it was definitely a relief though, when Edmonton, Alberta popped up on my phone, and I was like, okay, great. Like I still, I get this chance, I get this opportunity to go out and prove what I'm worth. So
you never forget draft day. It could be for good reason, or it's a blessing and a curse. Like you
Seriously.
Could sliding down the draft board, sliding down, and your friends and family, you're still gonna get drafted, right? You're like, no, they told me it's what they, I hope so.
But you went higher than me, bro. When you get to that 7th round, you're starting to go, uh-oh.
Fair enough. So then they drafted you, and then they sent you back to school, right, to McMaster. What was that conversation like?
I totally get it when they sent me back, and it ended up being a blessing in disguise because that 5th year, I didn't really have much like school to finish up, but I ended up doing a thesis in the integrative neuromuscular biology lab at McMaster.
I don't know what that
It was an amazing experience, man, because it gave me a chance to like do research. It gave me a chance to, and which ended up really helping with medical school applications, and then also kind of meet and network with a ton of people who kind of had similar goals of maybe doing medicine or research one day. So it ended up being such a growth opportunity for me to go back to school. So, I mean, looking back on it big picture, I'm actually so grateful Edmonton sent me back for that year because it ended up being such a good thing for me.
When looking back at that experience, like that year, like, in regards to like personal growth, like I'm so grateful for it, like so grateful. At the time, you're not, but now.
I know, yeah, you're mad, you're pissed, you're like, come on, like, yeah, it's like, what do you mean? Like, you got to be kidding me. But then, I mean, I feel like, it's hindsight's 20/20, right? You look back and you go, okay, that was actually the better opportunity for me.
Finds a way. So the next year, they bring you back into training camp. You have a pretty solid camp, but then they cut you.
Yeah, so I mean that first one getting cut, I was like, I get it. The second time I got cut, I mean that season I went back to McMaster, I was like, okay, they're gonna make me rush from the inside. So I was 260. I weighed nothing the first training camp. That second training camp, I came in at a good 275. The running drills. And I'm not saying I was great, but I wasn't getting driven back 15 yards anymore. So I mean, things had improved. But yeah, I had a great camp. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, what it came down to was, I mean, it was a mixture of kind of opportunity and Edmonton at the time. I mean, shout out to Kwaku. Kwaku helped. But when me and Kwaku got drafted, there wasn't a single Canadian defensive lineman at Edmonton. It was entirely American. And Kwaku kind of established that Canadian defensive end spot. But I mean, with Edmonton, they were looking at me as a defensive tackle, and there were no Canadians there. And they were just like, Mark, straight up with you, like, if there was a Canadian starter here, maybe we could keep you on and develop you and grow you, but there's just not. So there's not really opportunity there. So that hurt me. And then at the same time, I battled through an injury in camp, and I mean, I sucked in the preseason game. I'm not going to lie to anybody. It wasn't the best. So, I mean, a mixture of those two, and all of a sudden, you know, it seemed at that time like the dream was over because, I mean, when you get drafted in the 8th round, you get labeled. You really get labeled. And the amount of opportunities you get, you know, when you get cut, it's like, I was competing with guys in that camp. I was right there with everybody. But then when you're back on the street and, you know, other teams are they going to pick you up or not? It's not, you know, oh, Mark can compete with these guys. That's the 8th round guy. That, you know what I mean? So you have to fight that label. So that's why, I mean, that was a long 4.5-hour flight home from Edmonton there. I was pretty gutted after they cut me that second time.
Yeah, no, and that's understandably so. But then a couple weeks later, they bring you back in, right?
Yeah,
What's your mindset like? Is it like, you know what, I just did my master's. Like, I know that I've met all these people in the medical field. I know that I can take this route. Or is it, you know what, they're bringing me in, they're giving me another chance. Is it kill or be killed mentality? Or is it kind of like, if this doesn't work out, I have something else waiting? Like, what was going through your head when they made that call?
I mean, at the time, I wasn't even, I mean, I've always had the goal of medical school, but at that time, that month period in my life, I wasn't thinking a thing about school because, I mean, when you've had a dream and a goal and a vision for so long and you're right there, you're literally right there and it slips through your fingers. That's all I was thinking about 24/7. When I got back off that flight, I didn't pout, cry about it. I said, okay, my elbow's messed up. I'm going to get that healed up. I'm going to get strong. And if somebody calls me, I am going to be ready when that phone. When I got to Edmonton, I didn't even know I was going to play. They called me up and they were like, "Do you want to come back?" I was like, "Yes." And then it turns out I was actually playing in that first game. So I knew that every opportunity I got in that game was probably going to be my last opportunity. So that's when I was rushing, when my hand was in the dirt. This is my last football reps ever. It was kill or be killed 100%.
For the guys that, even myself, the guys that kind of have trouble understanding, like, you're coming off your second year, and some would even say you're in the prime of your career, right? And then you get the acceptance to medical school, and you choose medical school. How did you come to that decision?
For sure. And I mean, that's the tough part for me, right? As I said, the last couple questions, I mean, everything about my career was this uphill battle. Like every rep I got, I felt like I was clawing for it. So, I mean, finally this offseason, like I actually had a couple teams reach out to me. So it's like, I'm no longer this 8th round pick. Yeah. I fought the label off. I'm kind of going into the season with momentum. And that's definitely what hurts the most because there's going to be some what ifs of, you know, how could I have used this momentum going in? But I think to explain my decision and for it to make more sense, you got to kind of understand the other side of things. And that's kind of the medical school kind of admission process. And it's super, super competitive in Canada. It's crazy. There's only a handful of schools and each school has about, you know, 100 to 150 spots. And I mean, you got some schools with like 100 spots with 5,000 people applying. So, I mean, you can be the perfect applicant, but then there's still a bit of a luck component to it because, I mean, sure, you cut out 80% of those people. I mean, the last 20%, I mean, yeah, it's cool I played football, but everyone's going to have something special about them. I mean, and then it comes down to like, how do they really make those decisions? And it's not like I got into every school I applied to. I got bare rejections, man. I got a ton of rejections. You know what I mean? Like it's
required, man. I know.
That's what I'm saying. It's like I feel like it gets lost in I feel like some people are like, oh, maybe you picked up the phone and called medical school and they let them in. No. So I mean, what it came down to is last year. So it's a long and drawn out process applying. So I sent my application for good like in October. That's when I sent it off. And I sent it off in October because I knew that I had played a lot of football. I had accomplished so many of my goals. And I said, you know what, if I do get lucky and it works out, you know, I would be okay walking away. And for me, it was just, I mean, I'm blessed that it worked out the way it did because I was fully ready that it might take 2 years, 3 years. I didn't know. So I figured, you know, I might as well start the process now because if it's going to take a couple of attempts, you know, I've got this amazing football career going for me that I can still rely on. I can still work on. So, I mean, I'm blessed that it worked out this time around. But it's bittersweet because then, that I do feel like I am leaving a little earlier than, I mean, if I didn't have the medical school, no, I wouldn't be leaving at all, right? So it does, there's going to be some what ifs, but there's not going to be any regrets.
Exactly. So when did you start this medical admissions process? And like, when did you start writing your MCAT? And when did you actually get the ball rolling for, you know what, I want to be a doctor. I'm going to medical school. I love football. I'm a football player, but I know in my heart, I want to be a doctor. So when did you get that admissions process rolling? And just speak about like the MCAT itself and the whole admissions process as a whole.
For sure. I think, the idea for medicine came back to, I was playing so many sports throughout high school, and with that comes the territory of injuries, right? So I was spending a ton of time at our local kind of the Fowler Kennedy Clinic in London, and I was spending a ton of time with physiotherapists, sport doctors, and I was like, this is your guys' job? Like, this is super cool. So and at the same time with high school, I was getting into the sciences, and then people were like, there's a degree with both, and I was like, well, that's just perfect. And that's kind of when the ball started rolling, and then I started, even during my time with a kinesiology degree, I started realizing, I'd really want to go into medicine. So I kind of throughout, university always had these kind of dual goals. I mean, I was a student athlete. The student was working towards medical school, and then the athlete was working towards the CFL. And I never felt that those two goals were, mutually exclusive. I always felt that I was kind of building on each other by working hard kind of at each goal at the same time.
You mentioned like the coronavirus, like the opportunity cost of like turning down med school for no season. Is that something you weighed? And like how much of that did you have to like delve into that to make that decision?
For sure. And it's, to be honest, it didn't play any role. When I sent that application out in October, I said, if I get in, that's it. Because I mean, it's such a competitive process, and when the opportunity presents itself, you take it. So I mean, season, no season, I was ready to take it. It's still even going to be interesting with medical school to see, is it going to be all online? Like, how's that going to affect it? But I mean, I'm definitely feeling for all the guys right now about the season.
Like, given the uncertainty of a job as a professional athlete, what was your mindset like? And in regards to like a timeline or exit strategy, like what kind of advice would you give?
I would say never go in with a timeline. I don't think you should come in saying, oh, by this arbitrary date, I'm out. I think what's more important is to come in with a plan. So, I mean, my plan's a little unique with medical school, but when I came in, I was never like, I'm going to play, 2 seasons and then I'm out. It was, I'm going to feel it out. I'm going to see where I am with my career. If things are working, great. If they're not, okay, I have this other thing going for me. And when the time is right, I'm going to make the switch. So, I think the biggest thing about the CFL is twofold, right? It's injuries and it's opportunity. And you just never know. I've personally been to 3 training camps, and I have seen guys tear their ACL on the very first day on a bag drill. You know what I mean? You can't predict that. You can't predict that. And then on the other hand, you play with great players, and you have guys you're like, that guy's a dog. That guy's really good. But then they find themselves in a situation where they're buried on a depth chart, they get forgotten about, they get released, they go to another team, same thing. So you just don't know. And other guys are like, that guy was okay, but then all of a sudden they end up in a perfect opportunity and they have a really long career. You can't predict those things. So I think going in with a timeline isn't the best idea. You got to go in with a plan. You got to go, if I tear my knee in a bag drill, day 1, this is what I'm doing. Because the awesome part, at least with the CFL, is you have so much time to kind of work on whatever that other plan is. I mean, for me, the off season, I use it for the MCAT, but other guys use it for, they're working towards certain career goals, so that everyone's career is going to end. But I mean, if you're working constantly on that plan and you're always thinking, what's outside of football, I think that's really, really important, especially with the CFL, because nothing's a given. Not only that, but just, even getting the chance to play professional football, there's so many opportunities to leverage that and use that to work towards your other goals. I mean, I can't even imagine how I would apply to medical school without having football as such a big part of my life. And there's so many networking opportunities, even not even professionally, but even as a student athlete as well through football. There's so many opportunities to leverage, that career and that part of yourself to work on other opportunities. So, I mean, if you're not working on it, I think it's just an opportunity lost, to be honest.
And there's one thing I always say, and then you can tell me if you agree, but me personally, if I wasn't a varsity athlete for the past 4 years, there's absolutely no way I would have gotten into law school. There's just no chance. Just being a varsity athlete gave me something that a lot of people didn't have. You know, I was able to work on time management skills. I was able to work on communication, leadership, all these different endeavors of just being a varsity athlete I was able to work on. And those skills transferred so well that a law school was able to say, you know what? Yeah, we'll give this kid a chance. You know what I mean? So do you agree with that sentiment?
Absolutely. I mean, that's bang on. And this, with the medical world too, I mean, when you go for the application process, they've got all these like traits that they think make a great doctor, and they want you to write about each one. And it's like leadership, collaborator, communicator. And I'm just sitting there like, I've got a football example. I've got a football example. To be honest with you, my application, bro, I'm
Football, yeah.
if somebody didn't like football, it was in trouble, because but it's so true, right? I mean, football gives you the opportunity to grow in so many different facets that when you end up making a transition to another career, I mean, you're set. You've had so many different opportunities to work on all these different skills, and it's so easily transferable. And that's why, I mean, I know there's a ton of football guys in law, and there's a ton of, you know, role models that I have who've gone from football to medicine, and because I mean, it's just so easy to transfer those skills, and they're so useful, you know, for other life endeavors.
Exactly. And before, you were kind of talking about this roadmap and this plan and kind of curating that plan. Is that something that you just kind of had internally, or did you have to learn that from someone that was a bit older than you, or this thing's in the end?
For sure. I mean, the big part for me, and what I always focus on with my goals, is to try to be the worst person in a room. So, I mean, when I was sent back from Edmonton to McMaster, I was the worst person in that lab for sure. I mean, there were people way smarter than me. And when you're the worst person in the room, that kind of raises your expectations. It raises the bar. And it not only does that, but it also provides you with a ton of mentors who are just better than you. So, I mean, when I started thinking about, okay, what do I need to do? It was easy to kind of look up to those people and I could rely on to kind of be like, well, this is how they did it. This is my life situation. You know, what do I need to do to get to their level? And I think that was, you know, incredibly important to be able to kind of rely on those support networks to be able to come up with a plan. And then there's so many people who want to help. That's what I found on my path. There's so many people that just want to share their experience. And if you just reach out for help, I mean, it doesn't even have to be someone you know. I mean, just go on an internet forum. I mean, most of the stuff I learned about the MCAT was on a subreddit. And there's so many people that go, you need to study 3 to 6 months for the MCAT. Find that time. Don't, you know, play Xbox the whole time. And I mean, little pieces of information like that, I just kind of kept adding it to my toolbox, to where it no longer was about coming up with a plan. It was, okay, here are the expectations I need to live up to. How do I do that? You know, how do I make my life mirror, you know, what my role models, what these people giving great advice, how do I get from A to B? And from that, I mean, decisions become a lot more straightforward when somebody already has the roadmap made out for you.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And similar to guys who want to get better at football or basketball or whatever, you find guys or people or situations that you want to get into, and you just soak up that information. Like, no matter where you can get it, you watch YouTube, you go follow Stephon Diggs on Instagram, you watch the way he runs his routes, you know. So, and it's very similar in regards to like getting better at football and getting better at life, getting better as a student, getting better as a person. Like the method doesn't change. I think a lot of time it's just the direction that people want to follow, right? So having guys like you come on and talk about your experience about equally applying yourself to football and medicine and as a person and as a character, I think it's really beneficial for people to see that.
But I mean, it's also important for people to know that, you know, I'm not that special. You know what I mean? I just worked really hard, and I had a plan, and I had goals, and I worked towards them. So I think, you know, I'm not that special. And I think anybody who has, you know, big goals and aspirations, if you are willing to put the work in, you can get there too. So I think it's really important to hear that from other people.
Exactly. So now that you're headed to medical school, congrats again, by the way.
Thanks.
And you played a couple years in the league. Like, how do you feel like your time as an Eskimo and also playing for McMaster, how do you feel like those experiences are going to help you in regards to medical school?
I think I've been thinking about it, and I think one of the main things for me that I think is super football specific is just kind of the mental toughness aspect to the game of football. And you know, when I think of football, I can't think of too many other sports that demand as much, you know, physical toughness, emotional toughness, mental toughness, you know, all at the same time. I mean, going through a CFL training camp is hard. It is 12-hour days. You're hurt. I mean, back to that first shot, I hyperextended my elbow. I'm waking up at 6 a.m. I'm like, I don't know if I like football anymore. I don't know if I like this. So, I mean, to be in those situations, to have that adversity through football and to just learn how to rely on others, how to love and trust other people, how to kind of find that inner dog. I mean, our D-line coach called it the shark mindset. He said, I mean, sharks got to move forward. They stop moving forward, they die. You're a shark, figure it out. And I think, being in that situation, not just in Edmonton, but I mean, the same thing happens as a student athlete as well. I mean, in university football, and having that adversity and finding a way to work through it has been, I think, the biggest advantage for me. So, I mean, I've got a lot of confidence going into medical school, and I don't think I'm the smartest guy. I don't think I'm a whiz or anything. So, I mean, it's intimidating to go and be with all these smart people and learn this difficult curriculum, but I'm super confident. And I think I found that confidence through football because I'm like, I've been through it first times. I know what it takes to go uphill. I know what hard work and preparation looks like, and I know how to control the controllables. And I think having that mental toughness not only is going to help me through medical school, but I think that's going to be big as a physician. I mean, look at what they're doing right now. You're dealing with coronavirus, and are you wearing PPE all day? And I mean, just little things like that, adversity, just knowing and having kind of that inner dog to kind of fight through that, I think is going to really, really, really help in the future. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the biggest football specific thing I could take away.
No, I think I agree 100% because even myself, because like similar, I'm not the smartest guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
definitely not the smartest guy, but I work hard. And
Mm-hmm.
going into law school, again, you're going in with all these people who have their masters, who just came back from Italy doing this, that, and the third. And I was like,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just in Montreal. You know what I mean? I don't got any of the stuff that you guys say. I don't have a master. I'm fresh out of university. So you
Right.
start
Oh,
to
for
think
sure.
that, but I think that whole aspect of the mental aspect of football, it's just something that you can't teach. Like training
No.
camp. I've never met a training camp that I've liked. I have.
No, you
I've been playing
can't.
this game a long time. It could be
You
a week, it
can't.
could be a month. But it's just that
Right.
mental fortitude that translates so well to anything else you do. And I think it's important for people to realize that because they know they
Mm-hmm.
can kind of bring that same football or basketball or tennis mindset over
Mm-hmm.
to education or the community or whatever it is that they have an interest in. I think it would have a large impact.
When you go from that football environment and you go to real life, I think it just really helps you excel big time.
So, what would you've done 2 years of professional sports, obviously 5 years on McMaster. You're a bit older now. What would you say to a first year Mark Mackie now?
Just believe in yourself and don't be intimidated. And whenever somebody tries to label you, don't allow them to. I think that's the big thing. I think the younger version of myself got really caught up with oh, I'm a McMaster Marauder. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I've been labeled as this. And I would take attacks to that identity really personally. And I think what I've learned throughout this whole journey of football and medicine is to build your own brand. Be yourself, have your vision, believe in it. And then, like I said, be the worst person in the room. Surround yourself with people who can be your mentors and support you, and just block all the negativity out. I mean, I remember for medical school, like whenever you go to a first year biology class or chemistry class, there's like 600 people in the room. And the professors, this happened like 3 of my classes. The professors will go, raise your hand if you want to go to medical school. And I'm like in first year, like, yeah, that's me. I hope I get to go. I look around, half the room like has their hand up. And they're like, yeah, guess what? Like 4 of you are going. And then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, like that kind of, you know what I mean? Like people are going to try to tear you down when you have big goals. And I think if I could tell myself anything, it would be block it out. Don't worry about the labels people put on you. Worry about your own vision and surround yourself with people who are going to support you to see it through. Mm-hmm.
Just be you, because I think at the end of the day, big picture, hindsight, the 2020, you look back, you will never regret being you, ever.
Right. For
Ever.
sure. And it's going to carry you to where you need to go too.
Exactly. So, Mark, I appreciate you coming on. I think a lot of people were incorporating some questions because they really wanted to hear from you, because it's not very often that a guy says, you know what, the CFL is cool, but I think I'm going to head over to med school. And anytime there's a guy like you that kind of embodies that mentality, I think it's always important to let some other people in on that and to hear kind of what's going through your mind, because it might be this interview that causes them to be like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't, especially now during Corona, I shouldn't spend 7 hours playing Warzone. Take a couple hours off
Right.
the game. And don't listen, I play PS4. I'm sure you play video games as well. Like, we do it.
Oh yeah.
But it's just a matter of like finding that other time to make yourself productive in some way. You know,
Sure.
not
Prioritizing. You got to
just something.
prioritize.
Exactly, just
Mhm.
prioritizing. So, Mark, appreciate you again.
For
And
sure.
I will
Yeah,
be.
thanks so much for having me on, and a big supporter of the page now. And just a big thing, like if anybody, any of your followers, anybody who watches this, you know, you got questions about medical school, anything like that, you know, I'm on Instagram, shoot me a message. I'm more than happy to kind of give you
Instagram.
my 2 cents on it. So,
Appreciate you. Thank you for being the epitome of a student athlete and really applying yourself in multiple avenues. And I appreciate you for coming on, sharing some knowledge, and always remember, you're built different.
yes, sir. Thanks so much for having me on, man. This
Yes,
is fun.
sir.